How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here this Open Line Friday. I'm glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, as always, text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, and you can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, follow me around social media, all that great stuff. I want to begin with North Carolina. As I mentioned at the beginning of yesterday's program, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there who are peddling these wild stories out of North Carolina, and they're simply not true. But the left is also denying things that are true. For example, FEMA says it has the money right now to help in North Carolina, but FEMA says it's going to run out of money by the end of the year and won't be able to help the rest of the hurricane season. And FEMA is essentially using dead bodies in North Carolina as a way to guilt the government into giving FEMA more money. And a story came out that FEMA had spent a lot of its money on illegal aliens. Turns out Customs and Border Patrol was ordered to reallocate a bunch of money to FEMA, and that's part of the money that FEMA spent. But this is the headline from Politico on June 7th, 2023. The headline is, New York City to get $104.6 million from FEMA for asylum seekers. That's right, from FEMA. The pot of money is the second from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and sharply contradicts expectations from top officials in the administration of New York City Mayor Eric Adams about how much money the city would be receiving. In early May, the Department of Homeland Security, which includes FEMA, announced a $332.5 million allocation that largely went to communities along the southern border. New York City received about $30 million, which drew outrage from the city. The city's allocation through the new federal shelter and services program constitutes around 30% of the money announced Wednesday and is larger than payments to other cities. The FEMA funds were negotiated as part of the budget, according to Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. So they are getting money from FEMA. That's the story last year. And now suddenly members of the media are like, no, they're not. No, they're not. They are. FEMA is an organization that is probably corrupt, definitely incompetent. There are good people who work there, and they mean well, but the Washington bureaucracy across the board is in poor shape. We do not have competent people. My daughter the other day, I've told you these ongoing stories, folks. My daughter the other day received in the mail a returned envelope that could not be delivered to the addressed party. The address was correct. The envelope was mailed months ago. When she mailed out her graduation invitations, people are still getting them in the mail. She graduated back in May. She mailed out the announcements in March. People are still getting them. The mail is an Article 1, Section 8 responsibility of the federal government. Disaster relief is not. A government that cannot handle the mail properly is not going to handle disaster relief properly. What a lot of you, I think, misunderstand, however, is that FEMA is not a first responder organization. Never has been a first responder organization. FEMA actually doesn't even begin to act until state governments request it and then further federal authorizations. But what the media is missing is that it took Joe Biden 5 days to sign a disaster declaration for North Carolina. There's absolutely incompetence. And a lot of people interpret extreme incompetence as maliciousness, but it's not. The incompetence in part comes from the arrogance of these bodies. And they think they know what's best, and they hold a lot of people in contempt. And it's not genuinely maliciousness. It presents itself as maliciousness, but it's an arrogance combined with incompetence. And that's what's happening at the federal government in all aspects of it. And it really came to fruition when Barack Obama was president of the United States, who took an already left-leaning bureaucracy and made it comfortable in its left-leaningness. And now it's moved on with the Biden administration. And by the way, I had an elected statewide official confirm this for me last night on the phone, who said that FEMA is telling local governments it will make them whole. And local governments are trying to allocate for their budgets. And he said he was advising these local governments that don't count on the FEMA money. It could take 3 or 4 years to get to you. 3 or 4 years for FEMA to reimburse local governments is outrageous. And he said one of the reasons it's taking 3 or 4 years, and you can look in FEMA's guidelines, and I have, and it's true, they are prioritizing equity. And in prioritizing equity, they are first giving their money to underserved communities of color. So Chimney Rock, North Carolina, obliterated by this disaster, will come later than a non-white community that was not as affected, because it's in the name of equity. We got to give to the community that wasn't completely affected, but because it's majority black, it therefore is definitionally underserved according to FEMA, and we'll get to Chimney Rock, North Carolina in a decade or so. We don't need a conspiracy theory that the federal government is bulldozing Chimney Rock, leaving bodies in the street, and taking everybody's land. We don't need that conspiracy theory to make it bad enough. It's bad enough that FEMA is prioritizing equity in its allocations. There's actually a school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that was destroyed by a tornado several years ago that FEMA was going to help, but they settled with their insurance company so that they could begin building, and FEMA got involved and is blocking the building effort because FEMA's got to figure out how much money to still give them. There are literally pallets of materials rotting and have been for over a year in a parking lot because FEMA is moving so slow in a tornado that took place several years ago. That should be scandal enough. It should be scandal enough that FEMA is prioritizing equity. But it's not a first responder. And FEMA will never do as much as the state government, will never do as much as the local government, will never do as much as private charity. Now, let me give you a real-world example from this morning about what Pete Buttigieg has done, and there's actually a practical reason why. Pete Buttigieg has suspended the ability to land and take off the Asheville airport. I made some phone calls on this, and here's what I can tell you. The reason is because the airport is overwhelmed. So many generous people are trying to fly in supplies. Air traffic control is overwhelmed. They don't have enough landing. They don't have enough number of landing rights and takeoff rights to handle all the traffic that's trying to come in. So they've had to restrict it. You've got to get prior approval. A friend of mine texted me this morning and said, I've got a pilot. He has a plane. It is loaded with supplies from churches in Florida to go to North Carolina, and they're being denied permission to land. They've got to have prior authorization. Can you help? Do you know anyone? I texted a buddy of mine who's a member of Congress. He texted me back right away and said, this is the lady they need to call. Call her right now. She'll give him permission. The plane is already in the air. And the lady explained to them that this has become necessary because they have too many planes. They can't land them all. They can't all take off. The skies are so crowded that they have legitimate safety concerns. This is separate from the helicopter issue. This is the landing and takeoff rights at the airport and the number of available times of day for people to come. It's overwhelmed. They've had to do it. It's not a conspiracy. It's of necessity. There are so many planes. They don't have space on the ground to have all the planes at the airport at one time. So they're having to have someone coordinate and say, okay, you land this time, you land this time. It's going to take you 4 hours to fly here. We'll have a runway spot clear for you to be able to land. That's all that's happening. And it's one lady who's handling the entire situation. I got her cell phone number. They called her. The plane's in the air. She had space. But in all of this, there are a couple of points that have to be made. One, we should expect competence from the government. We spend our tax dollars. It goes to a group like FEMA. We should want FEMA to be competent, and we should want FEMA to respond in a timely manner. Two, we should not want a federal government that screwed up COVID and everything else it touches, including mail delivery service, to try to be the first responder in a disaster. We can be outraged at the government incompetence, and as conservatives want less of it, but also recognize that our taxpayer dollars are going to it. Therefore, it should be operating in a competent way that does not priority BS stuff like equity, as opposed to this town got wiped off the map. We must prioritize its recovery first. But there's something else that must be said. The government is not going to save you. Do not look for the government to save you. Do not be outraged that the government is not saving people in North Carolina. If you call 911 because someone's kicking in your door, you're going to save yourself before the government shows up. When the storm comes, you're going to save yourself before the government. Your local community is going to save you before the government. Your friends are going to save you before the government. You know who was on the ground while the floodwaters were still raging? The Southern Baptist Convention. Its disaster relief program is better than anybody else's in the country. They were literally on the ground as the storm was raging in North Carolina, already beginning the recovery effort. The Mormons came closely after them. Walmart has showed up. The private sector and nonprofits have gotten there quicker, and they're going to handle it. And the question is not whether or not, when the government says private responses need to cease and allow the government to rise, the question's not that. The question is, what are you, the private citizen charity, going to do when government tells you that? Because the government is your government. You don't belong to the government, even though that's what the Democrats believe. The government belongs to you. And if the government is impeding recovery, you have the ability to go beyond that government entity that is blocking you from recovery, because the government works for you. You don't work for the government. Private charity and neighbor helping neighbor is going to save lives in North Carolina. The federal government is not. The federal government is a bunch of clowns that want you dependent on the federal government, and they're run by a dementia patient who doesn't even know whether he's living or dead. You're going to save yourself. FEMA's always going to be a mess. Should it be cleaned up? Yes, it needs to be cleaned up. Your distrust of government, though, is being manipulated by people lying to you. You want to hate the Democrats. They're giving you lots of stuff on social media to hate the Democrats with, and half of it isn't true. They're preying on you, and many people are allowing them to be preyed upon. I wrote this in my morning email. I hope you might get it and read it. In his pamphlet, A Simple Way to Pray, Martin Luther said of the line, "Give us this day our daily bread," in the Lord's Prayer, that we should reflect on praying in part this: grant to every estate townsman or farmer to be diligent and to display charity and loyalty toward each other. When we pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," we pray to God. He doesn't hand it to us directly, but from the farmer who grows the wheat, the harvester who harvests the wheat, the petrol man who makes the gas to fuel the combine and the truck to get it to market along with the truck driver, the grocer who sells it, the relief operator who buys it, who delivers it to the mountains to those in need. It's the body of Christ working and the people in communities working who are going to provide relief and rescue. It is not the government. The government is not going to save you. FEMA was not designed to save you. We're going to save each other. We don't need the conspiracy theories in North Carolina to be exaggerated. It's bad enough as it is. Government incompetence is on full display. People are interpreting the arrogance and incompetence as maliciousness, and I understand it, but it is not maliciousness. It is arrogance and incompetence. But beyond all that, your focus there on that distraction is distracting you from the people of North Carolina. The states around North Carolina, the people around the state of North Carolina have all come together to rescue people, recover bodies, and rebuild. The government of the United States is not going to save you or me. The people of the United States are. It is as true today as it always has been. Americans, led by the Southern Baptists. And by the way, I'm not just saying that, it's actually true. They're the first ones in. They'll be the last ones out. And 10 years from now, FEMA will start writing checks. That in and of itself is an outrage, and that needs to be fixed. But don't be so focused on what FEMA is or is not doing to distract you from the fact that Americans have mobilized to help save people in North Carolina, and they will not let bureaucrats stand in the way. And that's a good thing. That is the American spirit we need to remember.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. It is an open line Friday. And Jeremy, let me go to you. Welcome.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Eric, I'm a general contractor and builder. I deal with the government every day in building regulations, permits, zonings, you name it. I have to deal with the government. And you hit the nail on the head. The government works for us. We don't work for the government. However, that is not the sentiment in any local government anywhere anymore. It's not just the federal bureaucracy. It is a disease within even the local governments. Every once in a while you get to a local government that you feel like works for you. And I recently had there's a local government I've been dealing with, and I asked the city manager, I said, how come you are so easy to deal with, unlike 95% of the other government agencies across this state that I deal with getting permits? And he said, well, we're in the utility business. They supply their own electricity, natural gas, and internet in this city, this Georgia city. And he says, we've modeled our whole government after our utility business to be a service of the people, and I think it makes a difference. And he was 100% right. The difference between that city and another city I'm getting a permit or dealing with a zoning 20 miles up the road is night and day difference. And I don't know where you start to get the government works for us.
It's got to be a culture of the elected officials instilling it on the bureaucrats, because the bureaucrats have got to understand that they are our employees. We're not theirs. You got to do that. Thanks very much for the phone call. Y'all, I got to tell you, speaking of great customer service, Vision Computers has it. If you call them, they're going to answer the phone in less than 15 seconds, and they're going to give you the answer to whatever is ailing you if you use their tech support. Really, really, really phenomenal customer support. If you call them at 404-COMPUTE, try that out. Don't take my word for it. Call them at 404-COMPUTE. Tell them I sent you. You're going to save even more money. They can build you a computer. They can also be your tech support solution. So when you call them 15 seconds or less, again, they're going to hand you the answer to whatever's wrong. They can even remote into your computer oftentimes and fix whatever's ailing. It's $179 a year. You do not have to have a computer from them to use their tech support. But if you do buy a computer from them, their tech support is completely free. So call them at 404-COMPUTE. Tell them Eric sent you. You're going to save even more money. They're going to be able to build you a computer. They're going to be able to give you tech support for your computer. They will answer the phone and give you world-class customer service. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Give them a call today. Greetings. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. It's an open line Friday. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, you get to help set the agenda for the day. I'm going to go to Bob next on the show. Bob, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great for a Friday, Eric. Thank you.
Excellent.
I've got several points. The one you just talked about with the FEMA response. And what it didn't highlight is that they're talking more about centralized control, whereas the examples you gave showed more efficient, quicker, probably more focused local response to the problem that exists. And it reinforces that all these problems should really be addressed first and predominantly at the local level, not the federal. Now, also, I think that Biden could have done more, because I thought when in New Orleans, they had the Army Corps of Engineers out there working on resolving a lot of the major problems, roads and bridges up through the East Coast. Why aren't they being involved to offer assistance and support for the local DOTs? And the third point is, my wife and I were listening to Harris's interview last week, and we were more focused on her word salad than the content. And then later when we listened, we realized this is a question about housing and how the federal government will address housing. Well, first thing she says is, well, we're going to have money to give to transit. And I thought, what the heck does that have to do with housing? Then she went on to say that we'll make money available for housing under these federal regulations. And I realized it was a very masked statement that I think is Obama's plan for housing, where they want to nationalize or take over, force local governments, counties, zoning to adopt the federal regulations, which would really decimate property values in the United States.
Yeah, okay, you make a really good point on that one, Bob, because what the Biden administration is trying to do through HUD actually is through grants and regulatory rewrite. They can't impose local zoning regulations. What they can do, however, is they can say, if you want money, you have to do these things. And
that's right.
they are absolutely trying to force some local governments into rezoning. And, you know, ironically, one of the issues here is gentrification. It's become all the rage among progressives these days. Now, what is gentrification? That is when you take a poor community and people of higher income start moving in because housing's cheap. They start fixing up the houses in the neighborhood, so the neighborhood starts to broaden the tax base. The homes go up in value, generates more property taxes. Well, when all the homes around you get more valuable, even if you haven't done anything to yours is going to get more valuable because of location. So then you can't afford to live there anymore, and you push out. And the Biden administration is actually trying to push back on gentrification. And by the way, it's mostly white progressives in urban areas who are causing it. And essentially, it's to keep tax bases low, but also, ironically, it's to keep poor people from even being able to fix up their houses in their communities. It's one of the wildest, least covered stories happening right now, is in order to push back on the gentrification in neighborhoods of white people moving into communities, the Biden administration is incentivizing local governments to ensure that the slum stays the slum. It's wild. It's their response to white progressives gentrifying areas. Now, I want to move to a story that it warms my heart to see this happening. It is this. Democrats fear how quickly the Wisconsin Senate race is tightening. Party insiders are worried Tammy Baldwin could lose. Tammy Baldwin, her lead in both public and internal polling has deteriorated, and Republicans are beginning to outspin the Democrats. Baldwin leads by just 2 points in internal Democratic polling. A source familiar with the campaign told Axios it's much closer than what public polling has shown for months. Democrats are on pace to be outspent by Republicans in the state every week until Election Day, with an infusion of around $20 million from Republican sources. Now, that would doom the Democrats in the Senate. Part of this is a fundraising plea, Democrats using the press to beg for money, but they have to beg for money because Baldwin's not doing well. One of the reasons Baldwin's not doing well is something I was the first person to call national attention to, and I got attacked for calling attention to it, but it's had a big impact there. Tammy Baldwin is a lesbian. She was one of the first, I think is the only lesbian in the United States. There was the first. She is in a relationship with a woman named Maria Brisbane. Maria Brisbane is a private wealth manager from New York City. Now, Nothing wrong with that in politics. What's wrong is that Baldwin and Brisbane have not gotten married, even though they consider themselves quote unquote life partners. So Baldwin has not disclosed the financial aspects of their relationship because she says they're not married, so the rules don't apply to her. But there have been credible allegations that Tammy Baldwin has, in her position in the United States Senate, helped to benefit the investments of her life partner through Tammy Baldwin's service in the United States Senate. There are all sorts of deeply troubling ethical issues about Tammy Baldwin's conduct in the United States Senate with her life partner, because they are not married. And so Tammy Baldwin says, I don't have to disclose any of this stuff. I don't have to disclose it. And what we know is that at least on a couple of cases, Tammy Baldwin has in the Senate advanced the interest of companies that there are credible allegations that her life partner has investments with. It would be unethical and violate the rules of the Senate, except Baldwin says there's nothing to see here because we're not married. They live together. They co-own a home or penthouse suite, something in Washington, D.C. They are the life partners. Now there's a story, and progressives are starting to pick this up as well. This is from a political website in Wisconsin. Senator Baldwin's partner, Maria Brisbane, advises the uber wealthy on industries regulated by Senator Baldwin, creating a massive conflict of interest. Senator Baldwin should disclose her partner's assets and client lists. The New York Post reported on the appearance of significant conflicts of interest that could arise from Baldwin and Brisbane's relationship. They have a $1.3 million D.C. home they purchased together. Senator Baldwin is the chair of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education and related agencies, and Brisbane's practice of investing her ultra-rich clients' money in industries that happen to be regulated through that subcommittee. And Baldwin has provided no transparency whatsoever on that relationship and on those investments and the entangling world of it. It should be deeply bothersome. What's so interesting is that what she pushes back on and says Baldwin is advocating legislation that would target conflicts of interest between the financial sector and those they regulate, including a cooling off period prohibiting former government employees from lobbying for 2 years. The bill is aimed at the executive branch, though, not the Congress. So Baldwin's out there saying, no, I favor transparency. Look, I've written legislation that would require transparency, except it exempts members of Congress. And Baldwin has refused to support an effort to amend congressional ethics legislation that would require disclosure of unmarried partnership relationships. She doesn't want to do that. She wants to keep it all private. And good for the Hovde team in Wisconsin for pointing this out. And it's having an impact on the voters. Now, there's a corollary here that I need to tell you on the bad news side of this for Republicans. It looks like, Hovde is surging in Wisconsin. McCormick is beginning to surge in Pennsylvania. That's a good sign. It looks like Tester is out in Montana, and it looks like Sherrod Brown is out in Ohio. It really does look like Bernie Moreno could win Ohio. But now let me give you the houses. The 1st Congressional District in Iowa has gone from lean Republican to toss-up. The 3rd Congressional District in Iowa has gone from lean Republican to toss-up. The Illinois 17 Congressional District has gone from lean Democrat to likely Democrat. That's an improvement for the Democrats. Indiana's 1st Congressional District has gone from lean Democrat to likely Democrat. That's an improvement for them. Montana's 1st Congressional District has gone from likely Republican to lean Republican. That's actually a decrease for the GOP. Everywhere there are Republicans, the House outlook is turning grim, and everywhere there are House Democrats, the outlook is turning good. It is looking more and more likely House Republicans could lose the United States House of Representatives, even as the Senate it's held by Republicans. Now, in fairness, we need the GOP to take the Senate. We need the GOP to take the Senate because we got to stop the Democrats from killing the filibuster and packing the Supreme Court. It's very important. I'm hoping and presuming that it happens. However, if the Republicans get the Senate and they don't get the House, the Trump tax cuts expire next year and everybody's taxes are going up. The Democrats will say they didn't raise taxes on the middle class, but the middle class taxes will go up because the Trump tax cuts expire. So if Republicans lose the House and gain the Senate, well, we're all screwed on taxes anyway. They got to win everything. They got to win the House, the Senate, and the White House in order to keep taxes from going up. Taxes aren't going to go down, although the capital gains tax might, which would boost some investment in the economy. Donald Trump wants it to go down to 15%. But taxes are probably going to go up. And they're probably going to go up at a time of economic turmoil in this country. But the Senate is important. And right now it looks like if the election were held today, Republicans, they're going to win West Virginia, which gives a 50-50 Senate. So you need the vice president as the tiebreaker. But it looks like they're going to win Montana, which gives them 51. It looks more and more like they could win Ohio, which gets them 52. And then it looks more and more like between Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, there's hope they could get to 53. Maybe they can pull off Maryland with Larry Hogan. I'm not sure. They're going to lose Arizona, a state they could be winning. Trump's going to win Arizona, and Kerry Lake's going to be losing Arizona. And the moral of the story between the House races and that race in Arizona for Kerry Lake is that candidate quality still matters. And so many people have wanted candidates who Donald Trump has laid hands on or who have made obscene spectacles of themselves humping his leg. Those people won the primaries, and they've been terrible general election candidates. We saw this with Herschel Walker. We saw it with Dr. Oz. We saw it with Kerry Lake and Blake Masters the last time. Now we're going to see it with Kerry Lake a second time. Candidate quality matters, and the Republicans in the Senate did a very good job recruiting very good candidates, and it looks like they're going to win. House Republicans did not do a very good job of recruiting people, and too many of Donald Trump's supporters, one of the people most loyal to Donald Trump, not the most likely to win. And that's going to cost the GOP some seats in the House. And then taxes will go up. With taxes going up, the economy, regulations, everything else, all the interest rate hikes. Well, Swiss America has been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years, and they've been warning people about a secret war in cash. If you've been interested in safeguarding your hard-earned cash from the secret war, you need to get their free report about the secret war on cash. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. Swiss America can educate you on protecting your assets in this report. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. It is completely free. All you have to do to get your copy is call or text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K. Call them, mention my name, Eric, or just text my name to this number, 800-289-2646. $1 war on cash includes digital forms of currency. The government is tracking how you spend your money, whether you believe it or not. They are. The report, Secret War on Cash, you can get it for free. Swiss American can educate you on this. Just mention Eric when you call or text 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric or call or text my name to 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. Message and data rates apply. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you need a heavy equipment loan, if you're buying a building, if you are buying a franchise, reach out to the Frost family at First Liberty, FirstLibertyGA.com. They make their own lending decisions and see if they might be able to help your business. FirstLibertyGA.com. Melania Trump has come out with her memoir, and she has come out as stridently pro-abortion. Now, in fairness, to my knowledge, we have never had a pro-life First Lady of the United States. Rosalind Carter, Nancy Reagan, Barbara Bush, Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, Michelle Obama, Jill Biden, and Melania Trump, they're all pro-abortion. And generally, husbands are rarely to the right of their wives on this issue. They may have to, for political expedience, be, but privately generally aligned with their wives. Melania Trump is now coming out pretty aggressively saying that she is not only pro-abortion, but she absolutely believes it's essential to support the right of women to be able to have an abortion if they so choose and control their bodies. This is, I'm sure, what she believes and has believed, but also timing is everything. It is not a coincidence in my mind that this is coming out. No, it's not, as some people said, oh, she really wants Trump to lose, that's why she's doing this. No. She wants to help Donald Trump with pro-choice voters. She wants to help Donald Trump. She wants to mitigate the abortion issue for the GOP. It's the same way that J.D. Vance is out there saying Donald Trump would absolutely veto a national abortion ban. This is a matter for the states. They're doing everything they can to reassure pro-abortion voters that there will be no abortion regulation from the federal government. Look, his wife is pro-abortion. This will cost Donald Trump nothing with pro-life voters, in the same way that Kamala Harris saying she is opposed to banning fracking will not cost her environmentalists, because the environmentalists and the pro-lifers understand what's at stake. Now, in fact, I will say, though, in a very close election, I actually think it's possible this could hurt Donald Trump with the hardcore pro-lifers, because the pro-life activists are the ones who are very upset about it. Pro-life activists are actually very loudly complaining that Melania Trump would do this. And given Donald Trump's statements on abortion in the last several months, a lot of pro-life activists have heartburn about having supported him. But the base of the party, not the hardcore activists inside the groups, but the ones who just care about the issue, they're not out there actually involved in the groups. They're not going to change. They're not going to stay home. They're going to go stop Kamala Harris. The Trump team understands pro-lifers are a cheap date in the same way that Kamala Harris understands that environmentalists are a cheap date. You know, privately they're on your side, so you can say, or they can say or do whatever they want, and you're still going to go vote for them. You're never going to hold them accountable. They know it, and you know it. And to the extent that you're mad at me calling you a cheap date, it's because you know you are. It's just the truth of the matter. When we come back, we got to move on to other stuff, including the economy. There's actually some really good news about the economy today. Jobs, wages going up, unemployment falling again, people going back to work, but the underlying data actually suggests we're headed towards a recession. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are still so unpopular as an administration. People think the economy is still headed in the wrong direction, that these are just more warning signs for the Democrats. Harry Itten on CNN again saying this is a big warning sign for Democrats and Kamala Harris in particular, that no president or administration has ever won re-election with people thinking the country is on the wrong track, as many people do now. Give you that data when we come back.